we are going to talk about bit a mixture of many different topics since they were given to be discussed in the same session. So I have tried my best to reduce it as much as possible. Most of the things in this presentation are just just it's not a complete description, complete management. You should know about them. In this today's lecture, many of the things are for you just to have at least some idea about these situations, these conditions. Uh, we will try to discuss it in a simple way, the simplest way possible. So, starting with congenital neurological disorders. The objectives of today's presentation are to describe different neurological congenital anomalies, understand the clinical presentation of patients suffering from cerebral palsy and polio infection, explain the management plan for patients with cerebral palsy, post-polio palsy, and congenital anomalies. Starting with congenital neurological anomalies. Before going into detail, we have to have some idea about the embryological development of a baby. There are 23 stages, each stage consisting of 2 to 3 days. The stage 8 to 23 is related to the development of the CNS, central nervous system. The normal CNS development, the three basic regions of the CNS, that is the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain, develop at the rostral end of the tube, means towards the head, with the spinal cord more quarterly. That is the caudal end of this tube. Within the developing spinal cord, specification of the different population of neural precursors like neural crest, sensory neurons, interneurons, glial cells, and motor neurons development takes place. Here is how the initial embryological, we will not go into the details, but simply the neural plate is formed, the neural fold is formed, the crest area chooses to form the neural tube. The types of CNS anomalies. There is a list, the names, if you at least keep these names in your mind, that will be sufficient. So, the arachnoid cyst, the neuroenteric cyst, craniosynostosis, encephalocele, Chiari malformation, Dundee Walker malformation, aqueductal stenosis, neural tube defect, shattered cord syndrome, split fall malformation, intracranial lipoma, hypothalamic hematoma. Mind it, these are only those congenital anomalies where neurosurgical intervention is being done nowadays. There are many congenital neurological anomalies in which the babies are either stillborn or they die soon after birth or in a couple of months to years' time. We do not intervene in those cases. Those complications are so dreadful. So we have not added those ones. There are a lot of many, like encephalomalacia. Those are also known as migrational, cell migrational defects, Porencephaly, Schizencephaly, many and so on. Okay, so arachnoid cyst, starting with the first in which we do intervene, the arachnoid cyst, usually they are in the intracranial component of the CNS, but they are also found in the intraspinal part of the CNS. Intracranial one, usually they are asymptomatic and discovered incidentally, like a patient undergoing sustaining head injury, undergoing CT brain. Incidentally, we've come out to know the patient is also having arachnoid cyst. They're usually symptomatic, but could be symptomatic. The symptoms related to arachnoid cyst are increased intracranial pressure, seizures, or hemiparesis. The treatment ranges from shunting to excision. The shunt is, intracranially within the bypass it totally. So, and then the intraspinal almost always dorsally located, again curvingly located. Here is the MRI brain with the two-weighted images, CSF, and the cyst component appearing white. This is the axial view. Here we see left the oral region is occupied by a large cystic lesion, and this is the sagittal view of the same fascia. The neuroenteric cyst is a CNS cyst, but here it is lined by endothelium resembling GIT or respiratory tract. That's why neuroenteric. Enteric means derived from the intestine. Uh, enteric resembling respiratory or gastrointestinal tract. So, spinal is the main location, usually the interiorly located. Intracranial is few reported cases, so only the spine is more commonly involved. Symptoms are pain or myelopathy or meningitis if there is a fistula. Fistula carries germs and spreading it into the CSF and affecting the brain. The treatment is complete removal of this lesion. Here in the cervical region, we see the bones, the medulla, and the cervical cord. There is a cystic lesion opposite to C2, C3, and C4 vertebral body, cervical 3 and cervical 4 vertebral body, which is compressing the spinal cord from interior to posterior. Craniosynostosis, abnormal premature closure of the cranial suture, which is congenital early closure of the suture. So might occur postnatally by abnormal positioning, which is also known as lazy lymphoid. Has many types according to the sutural mode. Most common are sagittal craniosynostosis. This sagittal craniosynostosis is also known as schistocephaly. Unilateral coronal synostosis is called plagiocephaly. Here the plagio is the PLA, not PLE, sorry to be corrected. Bilateral coronal or bilateral lambdoid. They are brachycephaly. If they are coronal, they are interior plagiocephaly or interior brachycephaly. If they are posterior, with the bilateral lambdoid sutures are involved, they are known as posterior plagiocephaly or posterior brachycephaly. Treatment is surgery, and the usual purpose is cosmetic. I mean, the skull shape is distorted. But sometimes it is a kind of decompressing the brain. If the brain starts growing and the skull cavity or the skull space is not in its normal shape, it will not allow the normal brain growth. It will result in retarded brain growth. So these sutures should be excised and brain should be decompressed. The normal appearing skull. We have metopic suture, the coronal suture, two sagittal suture, one and two lambdoid sutures. If interior both coronal sutures are fused, like normally where the growth occurs, perpendicular to suture, the growth is bone is deposited and growth will occur in the skull. Perpendicular to this suture, that if this suture is missing, so perpendicular to it will not occur. Parallel to this region, growth will occur. Like here, this direction growth has started. To compensate this arrested growth at coronal level. So this is interior brachycephaly, and this is interior plagiocephaly. This is posterior plagiocephaly. If bilateral lymphatic sutures are sinusosed or prematurely closed, then this would have been called posterior brachycephaly. Okay, interior, posterior. Which one is one suture is called plagiocephaly? Just one side is prematurely closed. Why cosmetic surgery is indicated if there is abnormal looking skull. Plus, if the patient presents with signs of neurological deficit or signs of increased intracranial pressure, like repeated vomiting, loss of consciousness or fit, which means the patient is having signs of raised intracranial pressure. Again, this has to be operated upon. Okay, we have a lengthy session. We have to reduce it as much as possible. Then the encephalocele. The encephalocele is a term used to describe a swelling in the skull. It is also known as cranium bifidum, usually assessed in the occipital region, which is called occipital encephalocele. It can be in the frontal region or at the base of the skull. In those cases, they are called as frontal encephalocele or basal encephalocele. It only contains, if it only contains the meninges, it is called meningocele. If it contains meninges and cerebral tissue, then this is called encephalocele. Another group is called basal infants, which I discussed right now, located at the base of the cranium. They are called basal encephalocele, or sometimes they are mistaken for a nasal polyp when they are seen in a patient with nasal obstruction. In NP, people see a swelling within the nasal cavity and they take it as a polyp. Sometimes they can be these basal encephalocele protruding down through the skull base and entering into the nasal cavity. Treatment is surgical excision of the encephalocele and watertight dural closure. Here is the occipital encephalocele and this is the frontal encephalocele. Chiari malformation. Basically, there are four types. Chiari 1, 2, 3, 4. Chiari 1, which is caudal descent of the cerebellar tonsils to the cervical canal. Chiari 2, caudal descent of the vermis of the cerebellum and medulla and the fourth ventricle. I mean, type 2 has two types of neural structure, like vermis, medulla, and ventricle. Carry 3 has cerebellar herniation and encephalocele. All cerebellum has herniated through the into the swelling or into the seat. Carry 4 malformation. In this case, there is only cerebellar hypoplasia. Treatment is surgical decompression of the posterior cranial fossa. We know the cranium is divided into inferior cranial fossa, the middle cranial fossa, and the posterior cranial fossa. Posterior to the glenoid is the posterior cranial fossa. Temporal is not known for here, temporal fossa. So frontal, temporal, and inferior, middle, and posterior cranial fossa. The posterior cranial fossa is the part where cerebellum is mainly located. You can see the cerebellar tonsils are herniating down over here, up till here. And this is the pons, and this is the medulla oblongata. This is the foramen magnum. So the medulla oblongata has also herniated downwards, but this is type 1 Chiari malformation because cerebellum has not herniated and fourth ventricle has not herniated. But though vermis and medulla has herniated, it can be. Usually type 1 is up till T1 since this has reached to T2. So this is type 2 Chiari malformation, not type 1 Chiari malformation. Then Devoker malformation. This is atresia of foramen of Mejendi and Lushka. You know what they are. CSFs are mainly formed within the lateral ventricle by choroid plexus. The CSF from lateral ventricle enters into the third ventricle through foramen of Monro, and from third ventricle to fourth ventricle to foramen of aqueduct through aqueduct of Salvius. And from fourth ventricle, the CSF will enter into subarachnoid space through two lateral foramina, which are lateral Lushka, and one posteriorly located median foramen, which is median, Mejendi. M stands Mejendi. So these two are atretic, either stenosis or completely obliterated. There is also a genesis of the worm. The fourth ventricle communicated with the posterior fossa cyst. Treatment is shunting the posterior cranial fossa. See, this is a huge cyst lying within the posterior cranial fossa. The bones, the medulla oblongata, and remnant or residual part of the cerebellar. This is cleared or replaced by CSF. This is the area of the third ventricle, the fourth ventricle, which is communicating with the Dandy-Walker cyst. How we treat it? We place a shunt, we open small opening over here, we place a shunt in this one, a tubular part within the cyst, and bring it subcutaneously to the abdomen. But there are some alterations in managing this one. Bringing this CSF to subarachnoid space is another option. Bringing this CSF to transverse sinus into corona, but they are very rarely performed. The common most procedure is placing a shunt within this is and bringing this shunt subcutaneously into the abdominal cavity, the peritoneal cavity, okay? Or sometimes surgical excision of this is warranted. The aqueductal stenosis. Aqueduct, we described it, aqueduct of Celsius, which is located between the third and fourth ventricle. If third ventricular and the path between the third ventricle and fourth ventricle is obstructed, so CSF from third ventricle will not enter into the fourth ventricle. This will result in dilatation of the third ventricle as well as the lateral ventricle, and CSF is mainly formed within the lateral ventricle. The fourth ventricle will be normally appearing. Okay, treatment is shunting. This is the normal fourth ventricle. We see the temporal horns, we see the frontal horns of the lateral ventricle, and also the third ventricle, which is usually a slit-like appearing, not like a balloon. So ballooning out of the third ventricle and very much dilated. They are like a mustache of a person. These are the lateral ventricles are not this much big. So this dilatation of the lateral ventricle and third ventricle with normal fourth ventricle. Again, treatment is placing a shunt within the lateral ventricle and bringing it subcutaneously into the peritoneal cavity. Spinal dysraphism, which is also known as spina bifida. There are two types of it, occulta and aperta. Occulta means, and it is usually skin covered. There is no skin deformity, there is no skin lesion, there is no skin swelling. It is usually it is skin covered. The defect in this case is malformation or non-formation of the spinous processes and the lamina of the vertebral column. Uh, the spina bifida aperta is further divided into. Aperta is the one which is apparent. There is skin swelling, there could be abnormality in the skin, skin color changes, skin hair formation, or congenital hemangiomas, etc. So they are further divided into meningocele and myelomeningocele, the aperta one. In meningocele, there is defect within the spinous processes and lemma plus lamina plus, which means meningocele is equal to number one. With this defect, in addition to this defect, there is also cystic distension of the meninges. In myelomeningocele, there is this defect, that is the spinal process and lamina, and number two, the cystic distension of the meninges, and number three, spinal cord or quada equina involvement is there. Type 2 and 3 usually require surgical repair. Different appearances of myelomeningocele, the skin covered but swelling is there, the skin pigmentation, tubular structure appearing on the skin, excessive hair appearance at the level of malformation, hemangiomas, etc., etc. So don't need to go into it. We described it, what was the defect, the spinous process and the lamina, the vertebral body, the transverse process, the spinal cord enclosed by the dural sheath. Here is the defect. So this sac will herniate outside, but without the cord or neural tissue, just CSF, the dura forming the main swelling. This is called meningocele. But if when there is neural tissue within this sac, this is called uh, myelomeningocele. Okay, here is how you nurse these patients. Coming to the tattered cord syndrome, there is thick phylum terminale with abnormal low-lying conus medullaris. There is gait problem, sensitivity problem, sensory problem. There is scoliotic deformity or kyphotic deformity of the spine, and there is bladder or bowel dysfunction. So, treatment is division of the phylum terminal. Here is a tattered cord. Usually at birth, the cord is lying at the level of L2, L3, and in childhood and in adulthood and onward, the cord lies at the level of at L1, L2. So this is L5, 4, 3, 2. 1. So this would have been the normal location of the spinal cord, but in this case we see it down till here between L4 and L5 level. This is the phylum terminal, which is fibrous, scattered, and it is not allowing the ascent of the cord. The cord is not growing with the rate with which the vertebral body grows. They will grow more. This will go less. When they are growing, the cord is elevated, it is ascending upward with the allowance of this phylum terminal. If it is fibrous and thickened, so it will not allow that descent. We again excite this cord so that this cord can ascend. This phylum terminal is being excited and this cord is allowed to move upward with growth. The split cord malformation, as the name explains, there is splitting of the cord. There are two types. Type 1, two cords with two coverings, that is the dura. Type 2, two cords within the same dura. Treatment is unscattering the cord by surgical intervention, of course. Here we see a coronal view with splitting of the cord. This is the fibrous band which is splitting this or two cords. Okay? We have intracranial lipoma, usually in the midline above the corpus callosum. Usually it is asymptomatic. This is again discovered incidentally. Might cause seizures or hydrocephalus. If it is causing hydrocephalus, then we perform LP shunt. The lumboperitoneal shunt is necessary. The rest we don't operate upon them. They usually benign, very slow growing. They really cause compression of the third ventricle and or epiductal failure resulting in hydrocephalus. Only in those cases we perform shunt. Here we see a small lipoma lying at the quadrigeminal cistern region. This is the region of quadrigeminal cistern. This is the space lipoma lying dorsally through the midbrain. Hypothalamic hematoma, abnormally located brain tissue. These are behavior disturbances and precocious puberty, mental retardation, and visual impairment. This is very rare, very rare. This is masses of ectopic neural tissue. This is usually if they are continuously growing and causes mass effect, cervical excision is warranted, like this one. This is a normal neural tissue lying below the corpus callosum and dorsally over the midbrain. No need to go into the detail in etiology. The neurofibromatosis, the cerebral palsy, and post-polio paralysis. Again, very different conditions, but since I was told to kindly describe to them the different spectra of these abnormalities and how the signs and symptoms related to cerebral palsy differ from those from polio. I will do my best to cover as much as I can. Neurofibromatosis. This is a genetic disorder that causes tumors to form on nerves. These tumors can develop anywhere in the nervous system. The tumors are usually non-cancerous or benign. They can only rarely become malignant. Symptoms are often mild. However, complication of neurofibromatosis impairment, heart and blood vessels, cardiovascular problems, loss of vision, and severe pain. Neurofibromatosis treatment aims to maximize healthy growth and development and to manage complications as soon as they arise. When neurofibromatosis causes large tumors or tumors that press on a nerve, surgery can help ease symptoms. Some people may benefit from other therapies such as stereotactic radiosurgery or medications to control pain. There are two types of neurofibromatosis, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 usually NF1 usually appears in childhood. Signs are often evident at birth or shortly afterwards and almost always by age 10. Signs and symptoms are often mild to moderate but can vary in severity. Signs and symptoms include flat light brown spots on the skin. They are also known as cafe au lait spots. These harmless spots are common in many people. Having more than six cafe au lait spots is a strong indication of NF1. They are usually present at birth or appear during the first years of life and then stabilize. Prickling in the armpits is another sign. Tiny lumps on the iris of your eyes, they are known as leash nodules. These are harmless nodules, cannot easily be seen, and do not affect the vision. Neurofibromatosis type 2 is much less common than NF1. Signs and symptoms of NF2 usually result from the development of benign slow-growing tumors like acoustic neuromas. We described this in when we were discussing the brain tumor or the CNS tumors. Acoustic neuromas are the tumors arising from the eighth cranial nerve in both ears. They are usually bilateral tumors or there are unilateral acoustic neuroma with another brain tumor like meningioma or glioma. These are also known as vestibular schwannomas. These tumors grow on the nerve that carries sound and balance information from the inner ear to the brain. Signs and symptoms generally appear in the late teen or early adult years and can vary in severity. Signs and symptoms can include gradual hearing loss, ringing in the ears, poor balance or ataxia, or headaches. Now coming to the cerebral part, of course, these are surgically managed. The tumors or the neurofibromatosis when the tumors are located in the CNS system, like within the cranial cavity or within the spinal cord, we do opt for surgery early than later. But in case of peripheral neurofibromas, we do not operate so frequently. Only those neurofibromas are operated which are creating uh, continuous pain which is not responding to medical treatment, or the size is enormous, it is causing disfigurement or ulceration at the skin level, then we go for surgery. Okay. Now coming to the cerebral palsy, these are not the children who are mimicking, they are handicapped patients. You see, cerebral palsy. There are many types of cerebral CP definition. In medical dictionary, the CP is known as non-progressive disorder of movement and posture caused by abnormal development or damage to motor control centers of the brain. But in my clinic definition, the CP is a disorder of the movement, the muscle tone, posture that is caused by an insult to the immature developing brain, most often before birth. Broadly, they are categorized into before birth, after birth, during birth, and some unknown causes. Before birth, we see the congenital abnormalities in brain development, infections in the mother during pregnancy. During birth, the brain injury due to oxygen deficiency during difficult labor, brain hemorrhage in premature babies. After birth, infection of the brain such as encephalomyelitis or meningitis, head trauma causing concussion or brain hemorrhage or unknown causes. Very detailed of all causes which can cause. these CP child in regard maternal, the gestational, the labor and delivery related causes. You can read it out by yourself. Perinatal, postnatal, or childhood causes. These are the ones which the causes of CP child which comes in our domain are the brain injury, the meningitis or encephalitis, the toxins, traumatic brain injury, infections or strokes. And how these patients will present? The spastic one, the athetoid one, the ataxic one, the rigidity and tremor. As they are explained, each of these are explained, each of these terms are explained. The spastic type of cerebral palsy. These are tense, contracted muscles, most common type of cerebral palsy. Then is the athetoid, which is constant uncontrolled motion of limbs, head, and eyes, or also called dancing position, dancing movements by the child. Ataxic, poor sense of balance, often causes falls and stumbles. Rigidity, tight muscles that resist effort to make them move. Tremors, uncontrolled shaking, interfering with coordination. Clinical manifestation, physical signs of CP child. When it is not clear, you can pick up when the patient is prone with some abnormality like poor head control after 3 months of age is a sign of CP child. Stiff or rigid arms or legs, again a sign of CP child. Pushing away or arching back, floppy or limp body posture. Cannot sit up without support by 8 months. Uses only one side of the body or only the arms to crawl, clench hands after 3 months. Legs scissoring, seizure, sensory impairment or hearing, vision impairment, etc. After 6 months of age, persistent tongue crushing. Early signs include stiff or floppy posture. This is floppy, this is stiff posture. And um, excessive lethargy or irritability, high-pitched crying, poor head control, the head will be hanging downward, weak suck, tongue thrust, tonic bite, and feeling difficult instantly there. How will diagnose a child with CP, with cerebral palsy? Of course, by physical examination, some of them we already described, the history taken, whether there was some insult to the mother during pregnancy or during childbirth, were there any complications, neurological assessment of the baby, magnetic MRI of the brain, ultrasound of the skull, computed tomography or CT scan of the skull. Treatment starts with medical. Therapy can help a person with cerebral palsy to enhance functional abilities, and therapy is chiefly symptomatic or preventive. The broad aims of therapy are to establish locomotion, communication, and self-help, to gain optimum appearance and integration of motor function, to correct associated defects as early and effectively, to provide educational opportunities adapted to the individual child needs and capabilities, to promote socialization experiences and other affected unaffected children. Treatment include physical therapy, occupational therapy, read it out, speech and language therapy, recreation therapy. Recreation therapy is very important to these children. You know, they are usually retarded, they will not, they continuously need a stimulus to improve their brain activity. This therapy can help improve your child's motor skills, speech, and emotional well-being. Recreation, like outing, going out to park, to attend parties, wait a minute, let me give you another simple example how recreation is very helpful. You know, in case of male or a man will not get, will sometimes, not everybody, like me, people like me are excluding this criteria. Most of men, they are not happy with one wife. They will prefer to have multiple wives. or um, in they will feel much attracted to many women. In case of females, they will not be happy with the old jewelry, with a limited number of clothes. They will continuously buy new clothes, new shoes, new jewelry, etc. This is a kind of recreation. They have a positive well-being. Modalities of treating CP children. Pharmacological treatment, of course, analgesic to reduce pain whenever you move stiff, uh, spastic limbs, they of course will cause pain. Botulinum toxin is sometimes used to stop the nerve conduction to a particular muscle, which is resulting in its contraction. So this will improve the spasticity. This will reduce the spasticity in a particular muscle. Inhale nitrous. It is also a muscle relaxant. Oral midazolam or botulinum toxin injection, etc. Okay. Then rolling sodium, baclofen, and diazepam to improve muscle coordination and to muscle relaxation. Anticonvulsant drugs if patient is presenting with fits or seizures. Selective dorsal rhizotomy, which is and gastrostomy. I will describe this one in detail because it belongs to neurosurgeon, so we will describe it a little bit what we do in this case. Surgery gastrostomy may be performed to improve healing, correct gastroesophageal reflex disease, and correct esophageal dander problem. The SDR, selective dorsal rhizotomy, is a surgical procedure that can help children with particularly severe muscle stiffness in their legs to improve their walking. The operation involves cutting some of the nerves in the lower spinal column, will, which can help relieve leg stiffness. What we do, like this is the leg, this is the motor output from the interior horn, this is the sensory input into the dorsal horn. So many dorsal roots, we excise some of them. So the abnormal input from that is excised. So when the sensory input is excised, there is comparatively decreased motor input from the motor cortex. It proportionally is also reduced, so the contraction in the muscles will get reduced. So sensation decrease, motor corresponding motor output is also decreased. Okay, they will become relaxed. Most recent advances in treating CP child is the stem cell transplant. What we do, like infarcted area of the brain, motor cortex, the area of the basal ganglia, the cerebellar region is involved. These areas are uh, filled with stem cells. And these stem cells are derived from bone marrow or adipose tissue, or neonates or embryos adrenal gland, which is banned in most of the countries, particularly our. We are not even thinking of doing such things. We have not started it. Um, so when these cells are transplanted, the hypothesis is when stem cells are placed in an area where these stem cells will adopt the function of that area which was designed for a particular function. A child completely paralyzed with brain stem with a stem cell transplant is becoming rehabilitation now. Jesus, the child needs some transplantation, complete attention and rehabilitation to recover from CP. In summary, 10 things regarding CP child. The 10 things I did not know about cerebral palsy was cerebral palsy is not so rare. It is caused by brain damage. There are different kinds. There are varying degrees. It messes with muscles big and small. It can make you tight or loose. It can be different every day. There is no cure. It does not disable your personality. You should not feel bad for people with cerebral palsy. I think we have run out of time. Now, here I made a single slide. This is basically polio is a pediatric disease, pediatric problem. Polio, we know it's a virus which causes infection in a baby. Sometimes this virus causes also interior horn cell infection, resulting in lower motor neuron type weakness, like flaccid paralysis. So this is post-polio paralysis and post-polio, no, sorry, this is acute illness starting with a febrile condition and then neurological deficit and then either recovery or plateau. They will remain the same. And then delayed neurological deficit after some period of plateau or neurological recovery. Read it by yourself. We finish it today. If you have any questions, you can approach and ask me. Okay?